Today we're talking to Steve Fergus, who's the head of healthcare for Barclays. Steve has been in corporate banking for 20 years. The previous 10 years have been purely devoted to healthcare. Welcome, Steve, to Pivotal People. It's really nice to have you here.
Good to be here.
One of the things that we're trying to find out at Pivotal People is what brought you to where you are now. So what I'd like to do is take you back in time to the young Steve starting out in his career. And first of all, what made you take the path into banking?
Well, the path into banking was a bit unusual for me because I started off out of university as a trainee solicitor. So I was a lawyer for a very short period until I realised either I wasn't very good at it or I didn't like it. I said I didn't like it, but in hindsight, I'm not sure I was very good at it either. So I just looked for a job, and I got a job at RBS, what was it, a huge bank back in 2004, 2005. And within about a week or two of doing that, I knew that was something I'd like to do. Big team, working with lots of people in a large institution. I'd previously been working in quite a small law firm, so it was great to be around people similar age. There was a social side to it, and I kind of found that was for me very, very quickly, whereas law definitely wasn't.
Yeah, I can understand that. And I think a lot of times we think we're not very good at something because we don't like it, when actually we probably just don't like it.
Yes.
So from being a banker, what brought you to care?
I guess if you get into corporate banking, there's lots of options available to you. So ultimately, what do we do in corporate banking? We look after the banking requirements of businesses and charities. And just like you individually would have banking needs, whether that's a mortgage on your house or a loan for your car or an overdraft or to make payments or bank accounts, that's no different for large, complicated companies. And for the first few years, you're working in banking, you're learning about how to lend money, understanding risk, understanding the various products. It takes quite a long time to experience lots of different areas, both sectors and products, to understand what it is you like doing. And quite quickly, I realised what I liked doing was lending money. That's the side of the bank I liked. And during the period of kind of, I guess, 2007, 2008, 9, 10, that period, sort of healthcare in the UK was really booming. That was the sort of first boom, if you like, of private healthcare, and there was a lot of money going from the high street banks into those organisations, funding their growth, funding their development, and I just got into doing that through my love of lending. But what's kind of kept me in healthcare, I guess, for the last 12, 13 years is my, the passion I see from my clients every single day. These are people who are not financially focused in the main part, but people focused, and you actually feel like to some extent you're helping them make a difference. I can't claim to be making a difference ourselves, but we're helping them make a difference.
I think, yes, you do make a difference. Without people like you behind them, it's very difficult to make a successful business. I always ask the same sort of questions with people like yourself, because I think it's fascinating how you understand the care sector. When I started working for Fulcrum, I was always amazed by the knowledge you have of what we do. And you understand how a care home works. Well, you became head of healthcare at the most ridiculous time in the history of healthcare, when we were hitting COVID, and that must have been a real challenge. Tell me a little bit more about that. What happened during COVID? Were we still needing money? Were we still needing your help?
Well, I mean, first things first, it's kind of you to say that the investors and the bankers understand the sector, because I often get a bit nervous. People say things like, how long have you worked in the healthcare sector? And I feel a little bit like a bit of a fraud. I mean, I sort of work in the banking sector, really. The healthcare sector is one that I've chosen to specialise in and become focused on, and one I enjoy working in. But I would never claim to know half as much, quarter as much, 10% as much as advisors or people who are in there every single day. But being a sector-focused institution like Barclays is, and actually there's other banks do that as well, does help. It does help that every single day to be talking to healthcare operators, social care operators, healthcare providers. And that was, I think, most telling in 2020. So you're right, I got this role in September 2020, so 6 months into the pandemic. I'd already been sort of a director on the Barclays healthcare team for the previous sort of 18 months of that. So I was well versed in how Barclays responded to situations like that. I think, there wasn't a huge demand for funding, for capital from the banks. What they were looking for is support. Yeah. Because in the early days of the pandemic, no one could predict what was going to happen. They just needed to know that we could be supportive on. There were occasions where we would provide extra finance if there were funding issues that had been caused by the pandemic. But actually, incredibly, in that first year, if you look across the whole of the Barclays, healthcare clients were had the lowest uptake of the sort of emergency loan schemes, because they actually they traded through it incredibly well. I mean, occupancy dropping 10, 15, 20%, and they traded through it. And that was partly due to support from the local and central government, but it was also due to the incredible hard work and commitment. So you would think that it was all hands to the pump at Barclays. And it was the first 2 or 3 months, but funny enough, sort of 4 or 5 months in, it was more just checking in, making sure everything was okay, and what could we do to help, if anything.
Yeah, I think occupancy suffered in a lot of care homes, and staffing was an issue. But for myself, from my background working in care homes for many years, I've never worked in a situation that we had to work in.
And hopefully never again.
I don't think that's going. Well, fingers crossed that never happens again. Tell me a little bit about what you enjoy about working with care providers. What is it about them as people that you enjoy working?
Well, I think within, let's say, the social care sector to start with, it is full of passionate entrepreneurs. My first ever care home site visit was probably in 2007, 2008. So, and I remember going around care homes and being told this is the best stock you'll see. This is fantastic, and they were great. I was really taken back because it was my first visit. I had one expectation, and then I saw something else. And I look at the last 16, 17 years of site visits that I do constantly, and the bar's been raised and raised. And I'm not just talking about luxury, I'm talking about care quality, how people respond to dementia requirements, how people respond to nursing needs. It's phenomenal, the advances that have been made in the sector, and just to sort of see that year on year, that's very fulfilling for me.
Yeah, I've seen that during my career as well, that we have changed the way that we work within the care sector, and we're very regulated, so the regulations are supporting us to do the very best we can. Okay. Your healthcare journey has obviously taken you through COVID, out the other side. Where do you see the care sector going in the future?
I think the demand is only going one way. Their needs are going up and up. So one thing's for absolutely certain, there's going to need to be a huge amount of investment into the care sector and support from, the financial sector where I work, but also government and local government. There's going to have to be more incentives and more. It's going to have to be made easier for people to grow, for people to build care homes, for people to run profitable domiciliary care businesses. The sheer amount of supply that's needed in the sector to meet the demand is going to. It's going to have to be exponentially growing in the next 5-10 years. And I know we're ready to play our part at Barclays, but the entrepreneurs out there, the charities, the independent sector, they need help from other areas as well. And it isn't, you can't just click your fingers and create 10 new care homes. It's a long term. It takes planning. It takes investment, and help is needed.
Yeah, I understand that, and I think going forward, we are starting to get to the point where certainly the fee rates that we're being offered by local authorities is nowhere near what we need to be able to run a successful care home. So throughout the time I was managing care homes, I was almost the private payers were supporting the very low rates of the local authority. But I think that's become worse. I think we've not got the uplift. We're having massive increases in minimum wage this year and have done over the last few years.
A concerted effort from both healthcare and social care governors to get together and create a plan, because right now money gets piled into the NHS, which they've got 7.8 million people on a waiting list right now, but if you don't fund social care, there's going to be more people needing the NHS, and they get the whole issue of bed blocking. So to me, this has been the perennial issue for years, where there's a lack of integration between social care and healthcare, a lack of planning, a lack of ability to go beyond the next general election. There's an election definitely this year, and you really want to see manifestos that come out with bold plans regarding health and social care, but do we expect to see that? I mean, probably not.
How would you go about choosing the care home for your mum or your grandparent?
Let me flip that. My wife's grandfather is currently in St Thomas's Hospital. Okay. He's frail, elderly, he's 89. He lives in local authority accommodation on his own. It's a 4-bedroom house. So, I mean, ridiculous, not fit for purpose for him, but it was fine at the time. And his family, his 4 kids and his many granddaughters and grandchildren, their husbands and wives like me, are absolutely determined to move him into more appropriate accommodation. But he won't go. And it's almost like, I know what's out there. There's some fantastic resources, whether it's sort of supported living, sheltered accommodation, some sort of domiciliary care combination with those things, or residential care. I know how great some of the services are out there. He still has this view that it's a giving up.
Sending him to the workhouse.
Something's not quite right. Yes. Something's not right. He wants to go back home. Yeah. So I'm one of the flag bearers for the sector. I absolutely believe in it. I know there's people on my team who've got parents and grandparents in care homes, and we absolutely would have no issue with them going there if it was right for them. The biggest challenge we find is convincing that generation of people this is the right thing to do, and actually to go in earlier is better for them in the longer term. They'll have more community, more things to do every single day, people to talk to. They'll get the same amount of visitors, if not more. So I would have no shortage of great places that grandparents or parents could be referred to, but convincing them it's the right idea is the biggest challenge.
Yeah, it is. And I think during my career as a care home manager, the biggest issue has always been trying to convince the person that's going into care that it's the right thing for them. And I think there's a lot of ways around that. We can provide respite care or trial periods, but it's getting them into the care home that's if you get them in, they can see actually it's not. They go back to the old workhouse where they got old and they got put to work in a horrible place that was. But care homes are, you're right, they're lovely, and there's a great choice of care services out there. But then also there's really good ways of supporting people at home too, and digital transformation is something that going forward the care sector it's one of the things that's probably going to save the care sector money eventually through less time spent on paperwork and things. But also for somebody like him to have stuff at home to monitor and to support him.
For a sector that's so reliant on staffing, it's fairly strange, maybe is one word to use, that the sector hasn't embraced digitalisation a little bit more. We're not saying that that digitalisation can replace human contact or caregiving, but if you can check in digitally with the residents or the patients or the service users, and that might prevent a visit, or it might mean you have to do 2 visits that day. But it's more focused quality of care rather than rotated care, if you like. So the sort of digitalisation of the sector is absolutely essential.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming to meet us today.
Thank you very much.